You don't need to change your mother. You need to change what your mind made of her. Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by intense emotions that no longer seem to make any sense? Have you ever cried over someone who isn't even part of your life anymore? Have you felt anger, abandonment, or guilt without really knowing where it's coming from? What if I told you that the pain you feel today might not actually be caused by your mother anymore, but by a shadow she left inside you? Take a deep breath now, because what you're about to hear may change the way you relate to your story, and more importantly, to yourself. In this video, we're going to talk about something deep, invisible, and ancestral, something Carl Jung dedicated his life to studying. We're not talking about your actual mother. We're talking about the psychic image of the mother you carry, a construct shaped by your mind, fed by experiences, distorted memories, childhood wounds, and by everything that was never said but was deeply felt. How many times have you tried to change your mother, tried to make her listen to you, understand you, give you the love you needed? Maybe you're still trying, but the truth is, you don't need to change your mother. You need to change what your mind made of her. Most of our adult emotional pain doesn't live in the present moment. It's made of emotional ghosts, memories frozen in time, that now play out through unconscious patterns, sabotaged relationships, and a constant sense that we're never good enough. Carl Jung said that what we fail to make conscious reappears as fate. And here's the crucial point. You could spend your whole life fighting the mother that exists out there without realizing that the real prison is inside you, in the invisible loyalty you still carry toward the maternal figure living in your unconscious. You don't notice it, but you keep trying to please, escape, forgive, or confront a psychic entity, an archetypal image that became crystallized in your soul. That image is not your real mother. It's a symbolic mix of your inner mother, the archetype of the great mother, your painful memories, and the unspoken silences of the past. And unless that image is re-signified, you'll remain stuck in the wounded child, stuck in the fear of being rejected, stuck in the illusion that one day your mother will change and finally give you what you've always needed. But what if, instead of waiting for healing that never comes, you became your own father, your own mother? What if, instead of carrying the pain, you looked it in the eye and said, "I see you, and now I choose to be free"? This journey isn't easy. It takes courage, clarity, and compassion, but it's absolutely necessary. In this video, we'll walk together through 10 essential chapters to understand how pain is formed, how the mind creates emotional traps, and how you can finally break free from this psychic prison and be reborn. Get ready. This isn't just another video, it's a mirror, a rite of passage, and maybe the beginning of your true liberation. If you've ever felt trapped in emotional patterns you can't explain, if you've felt that no matter how much you change cities, partners, or careers, part of you still feels small, guilty, or needy, then this video was made for you. Like this video now, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel, because here we don't run from pain, we transform it into wisdom. Ready to begin? Then let's walk together through the invisible prison and find the key to your true freedom. The invisible prison, the hidden power of the maternal image. Have you ever wondered why, even after years of therapy, self-discovery, and external changes, you still feel tied to the past? Like a part of you is shackled to something invisible, yet incredibly powerful. That prison has a name, and it's not outside of you, it's inside. It's called the inner maternal image. We're not talking about your mother as a person. We're talking about the symbolic, emotional, and archetypal representation your psyche built of her, often still rooted in childhood. Carl Jung taught us that we are surrounded by psychic images, which are not just memories, but inner realities with a life of their own. The image of the mother is one of the most powerful. It's formed by the gestures you received, the looks that were missing, the words that protected you or wounded you. It's also shaped by the unconscious projections you made in order to survive emotionally during childhood. The mother you see inside yourself today may not even exist anymore. Maybe she never existed that way at all. But the pain is real because your mind crystallized that image. Picture a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. Each shard represents a memory, an expectation, a frustration. The inner maternal image is the symbolic fusion of those fragments. But here's the problem. Even as you grow up, your psyche keeps reflecting reality through that broken mirror. And that's where the prison lies. You're no longer living with your real mother, but with the internal mother your mind created. That's why you can be 30, 40, 50 years old and still feel like a child around her. That's why you avoid confrontation, feel guilty for pulling away, or carry a deep emptiness from not having received the love you longed for. You're not dealing with your present-day mother. You're dealing with a psychic entity shaped by your unconscious. And that entity has power. It influences your relationships, your decisions, your self-esteem. It might be behind your tendency to self-sabotage, your constant need for approval, your repeating cycles of abandonment or rejection. It's like living in an emotional maze where every path leads back to the same place. The unconscious need to heal something with your mother. Even if she's changed, even if she's no longer alive, even if you rationally say, "I'm over it." The mind is cunning. It preserves wounds like sacred relics, and the more we repress those pains, the more they morph into repeating patterns, into invisible prisons. And the strangest part, we often think we need to change the mother outside. But that's just the ego's illusion. True freedom begins when you look inward and realize that what holds you back isn't her anymore. It's the image of her inside you, and that image needs to be resignified. Jung called this the process of individuation, the movement toward wholeness of being. To individuate is to psychologically separate from your inner parents. It's to look at the image of the mother that lives in your unconscious and say, "I see you, but I'm no longer the child who needs to please you." But beware, this isn't a violent break. It's an act of psychic maturity. It's acknowledging that your pain has legitimate roots, but now you can step out of the victim role and take emotional ownership of your life. You don't need to change your actual mother. You need to free yourself from the symbolic image your soul froze in time. And that only happens when you stop fighting her and start looking at yourself. Because deep down, you're not at war with your mother. You're at war with the part of you that still believes you need her to be whole. You're not trapped by a person. You're trapped by a child's hope. And there's only one way out: to become your own father and mother. That journey starts here, in the courage to see the invisible, in the clarity to recognize the prison, and finally, build the keys to your freedom. The echo of childhood. When your emotional pain is no longer real, but symbolic. Have you ever felt a pain you couldn't explain? A sadness with no clear reason, an ache that creeps in during the silence of the night, as if something inside you were mourning a past that was never truly understood. Maybe what you're feeling is no longer a real pain. It's symbolic pain, an echo. Yes, an echo from childhood, still resonating today in your emotional body. As children, we are vulnerable, open, sensitive. Our world is shaped by the smallest gestures, a missing hug, a harsh tone of voice, an absence that was never explained, and all of that becomes symbols. The lack of comfort turns into abandonment. The absence of being heard becomes rejection, and the attempt to survive the pain becomes armor you might still not know how to take off. But here's the thing: what hurt you as a child isn't happening anymore. You've grown, you've moved. You've built a life, but you still react as if you're 5 years old. Why? Because your emotional mind doesn't understand chronological time. It functions in symbolic cycles. It responds to the inner image, not to the outer reality. That's why you might be in a loving relationship and suddenly feel rejected, as if you were face to face with your mother. That's why a simple critique at work can unleash an intense rage, which is really the pain of never being heard as a child. That's why you might constantly strive to be good enough, as if still trying to prove something to the one who never truly saw you. You're not reacting to the present. You're reacting to the symbolic image of the past that still lives inside you. And this is more common than you think. It's as if parts of us are frozen in time, emotional fragments that never matured, parts that, when triggered, take over completely. Carl Jung said, "We are not masters of our unconscious emotions. They possess us. And when we don't know this, those emotions become our silent masters. They lead us to sabotage relationships, avoid intimacy, seek approval, repeat dependency patterns." Have you ever said, "I feel like a child again when I'm around my mom"? Or, "I keep waiting for something that never comes"? Those statements reveal something important. You're living from an old script. And here's the key. This pain is no longer about your mother. It's about what your psyche associated with her. It's about a crystallized, symbolic image that represents something far greater than reality. Emotional pain, when left unprocessed, becomes a totem, a symbol that carries the suffering of many phases of your life. And without realizing it, you keep worshipping that totem. But now you know. Now you have a chance to look at that echo and understand that it's no longer real. It's a reverberation, an old sound that keeps repeating, but that you can consciously silence. So how do you do that? First, by recognizing that what hurts isn't the actual person, but the unconscious representation you built of her. Second, by accepting that your wounded part is valid, but you can care for it from a new place. Third, by learning to tell the difference between what belongs to the present and what belongs to the past. You are no longer the helpless child. You are the conscious adult, and this adult has the power to hold your symbolic pain with love and awareness. Your soul is asking for an update. It's asking you to enter the present and free the parts of you still trapped in the past. Can you feel that? This is the beginning of your true rebirth. When you realize the pain is still there, but you no longer have to identify with it. You can observe it, understand it, and slowly let it go. Because symbolic pain only holds power until you shine the light of consciousness on it. The collective unconscious and the archetype of the mother. Have you ever felt like there's something greater at work inside you? Something that goes beyond your personal story, as if certain emotions, fears, or wounds weren't just yours. What if I told you that your relationship with your mother didn't start with her? It began long before. It began in an invisible, deep, ancestral field where we are all connected. Carl Jung called this field the collective unconscious. It's like a subterranean ocean of symbols, images, and experiences shared by all of humanity. Within it live the archetypes, universal psychic structures that shape how we feel, think, and live. Among all archetypes, one stands out for its emotional power, the mother archetype. This archetype is not your biological mother. It is a psychic force that represents origin, nurturing, the womb, the earth, sustenance, but also destruction, devouring, abandonment, suffocation. It is dual. It is total. It is the cosmic mother, capable of birthing life and also our deepest suffering. When you were born, your psyche didn't yet distinguish between your real mother and the mother archetype. Your infant mind fused everything into a single image, the goddess and the monster, the embrace and the abyss. That's why, for many of us, maternal wounds are so intense, because we're not just dealing with a human mother who loves, who fails, who tries. We're dealing with an activated archetypal force within us. Jung said archetypes live within us as powers, shaping our experiences without our awareness. They show up in dreams, symbols, and repeating patterns, and when unacknowledged, they consume us. The image you hold of your mother may partly be a mirror of this archetype. If you feel that she devoured you, erased you, emotionally smothered you, you may be projecting onto her the dark side of the great mother, the devouring mother, who imprisons instead of nurturing. But what if your mother was absent, cold, distant? You may have activated in her the archetype of the neglectful mother, the one who abandons, overlooks, creates, and then disappears. Do you see? The pain is real, but it grows stronger when it fuses with the archetype. Here's the key. Until you separate the archetype from the person, you'll be trapped in a mythical, archetypal emotional experience, unable to see your mother as a human being. You need to deactivate the myth. You need to separate the internal, universal, ancestral mother from the concrete, flawed human woman who raised you. That's essential for your emotional freedom. Because as long as you keep your mother on a pedestal or in a dungeon of archetypal power, you'll remain a child. You'll keep waiting for the impossible, waiting for her to save you, heal you, recognize you the way only a symbol could. But she can't, because she's not the archetype, she's human, and that is liberating. True healing begins when you look at the mother archetype within and acknowledge it. You are powerful, yes, but I'm no longer your slave. And then you look at your real mother, and maybe, for the first time, you're able to see her pain, the weight she carries, the wounds she inherited. And finally, you stop demanding from her what only the divine could give. At that moment, you become an adult. You become free. And something magical happens. You begin to access the luminous side of the mother archetype, the part that nurtures, embraces, nourishes, not from the outside, but from within. You learn to be your own symbolic mother, to hold yourself with the strength of the great mother within, and that is the beginning of your rebirth. Invisible loyalty. Why you still protect who hurt you. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to confront certain childhood wounds? Why, even though you suffered, you feel guilty just thinking, my mother hurt me? Why, even in silence, you keep trying to defend her as inside yourself? This is one of the deepest paradoxes of the soul, the invisible loyalty to those who hurt us. You may have been ignored, rejected, criticized, emotionally invaded, and yet part of you still tries to justify it. She did the best she could. It was hard for her too, but she loved me. And all of that may be true, but it might also be an unconscious pact your soul made in childhood, one you're still honoring today without even realizing it. This loyalty isn't rational, it's archetypal. It comes from our most primal need to belong. Back in childhood, you learned that loving your mother was a matter of survival. She was your source of food, affection, protection. Any rupture in that bond meant danger. So even in pain, you made an agreement. I'll deny my pain, but I'll keep loving you. I'll accept being hurt as long as you stay close. I'll pretend everything's fine if that keeps you alive for me. These words were never spoken, but your soul recorded them. Carl Jung said that what is repressed doesn't disappear. It hides in the unconscious, where it operates with even greater force. That's how invisible loyalty works. It lives in the deepest layers of your psyche, stopping you from breaking toxic patterns in the name of love. It's a distorted, childlike, archetypal kind of love, the kind that protects even when it wounds. And you may think, but I'm not a child anymore, I've grown. Yes, but your unconscious is still bound to the pact. That's why every time you try to say something hurt, an inner voice screams, you're being unfair. That's why when you begin to emotionally pull away, you feel guilt, fear, shame. That's why you keep self-silencing, to avoid displeasing the inner mother you swore to protect. You've created a sacred, untouchable figure within yourself, and you became the guardian of pain. But here's the thing, that loyalty comes with a price. And that price is you. Every time you silence your pain to protect her image, you abandon yourself. Every time you try to be the perfect child, the understanding adult, the spiritual one who forgives everything, you distance yourself from your emotional truth. And your soul feels it. The soul gets sick when you lie to it. So why do you still protect the one who hurt you? Because you're trapped in a childlike loyalty that's keeping you from growing. And breaking free from that isn't betrayal. It's not disrespect. On the contrary, Celeste, it's the first act of true love for yourself. Acknowledging that you were hurt doesn't mean hating your mother. It means honoring the child you were, the one who was forgotten for too long, all to preserve a bond that no longer serves you. You can love and still recognize the pain. You can honor your story without having to carry its trauma as your destiny. Jung reminded us that consciousness heals. And right now, by shedding light on this invisible loyalty, you begin to dissolve one of your soul's oldest chains. But be careful. Breaking this loyalty isn't about outward confrontation. You don't need to face your mother, argue, or sever physical ties. The real liberation is internal. It's when you say to yourself, I can see what happened, without excuses, denial, or blame. I can acknowledge my pain without losing my love for her. I can leave this pact and finally live my truth. And when that happens, something within you loosens, as if a part of your soul finally says, now I can breathe. You reconnect with your original strength, with your psychic integrity. And at last, you begin to write a new chapter where love no longer comes from sacrifice, but from authenticity. You were not born to carry guilt that's not yours, nor to pay the price of inherited silence. You were born to be whole, and that begins when you stop protecting the pain and start protecting yourself. What your mind made of her, the creation of a psychic entity. Have you noticed how sometimes your mother doesn't even have to be around for her to keep living inside you? As if her voice still echoes in your thoughts? As if her judgments still dictate your decisions? As if, even at a distance, she still affects you? That's because your mind, quiet, creative, and powerful, transformed your real mother into a psychic entity. Yes. Your mother doesn't just live in photo albums or past memories. She lives, most of all, in a symbolic construction you fed throughout your life. Carl Jung said the human psyche creates autonomous images, complexes that take on a life of their own. These complexes are like inner selves, emotional versions of you shaped by significant experiences, especially in childhood. And among all of them, the most powerful is the mother complex. Once formed, this maternal complex no longer needs your mother's physical presence to exist. It becomes a symbolic entity, an emotional energy field, a living image that watches you, criticizes you, limits you, or manipulates you from within. You may wake up already feeling guilty. You may hesitate to make important decisions out of fear of making a mistake. You may hide your vulnerability because inside you there's an inner mother who judges and controls. But this inner mother is no longer your real mother. She's what your mind made of her. She's the sum of the words you heard, the silences you felt, the gestures that marked you, all wrapped in a symbolic energy your soul recorded as a being, a psychic being, an emotional presence. This psychic entity isn't evil. She was created for a reason, to protect you. Yes, at first, this construction was your emotional survival tool. If your mother was unpredictable, you built an internal version of her and learned to adapt. If your mother was absent, you created an inner mother who demanded perfection, so you'd never be abandoned again. If your mother was critical, you shaped your identity through that criticism and began judging yourself before anyone else could. But the problem begins when that entity keeps running your life long after childhood is over. You forget that you created her. and you start obeying her as if she were the ultimate truth. She becomes your lens on reality. You emotionally marry her, and she begins to influence your relationships, your self-esteem, even your spirituality. How many times have you given up on something because that inner voice said you weren't good enough? How many times have you sabotaged yourself, thinking it was your own will when it was really that inner entity speaking for you? And maybe most painfully, how many times have you become that symbolic mother to yourself, repeating her words, treating yourself with the same harshness, punishing yourself for the same reasons? It's like the prison moved. It's no longer outside, it's now installed in your unconscious, quietly operating like an emotional virus. But now that you know this, you can begin to change. And that change doesn't start by erasing your real mother. It starts by courageously facing this psychic entity and saying, I see you, I understand why you were created, but now I don't need you like this anymore. You can begin to deconstruct her. You can give her a new name. You can redesign your inner maternal image, turning her from a critic into a guide, from a shadow into a symbol of healing. Carl Jung said that every unconscious complex we refuse to face becomes our destiny. But every complex we bring into the light becomes wisdom. This psychic entity can stop being your jailer and become your mentor. As long as you put her in her proper place, a symbol from the past, not an authority in the present. You are bigger than her because you created her. And now you can free yourself from her. And when you do, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start hearing another voice inside. A gentler, kinder, clearer voice. Your voice. The voice of your true self. The voice of the conscious adult. The voice of your soul. That's the voice that knows you no longer need to be ruled by pain. That you no longer need to carry guilt that isn't yours. That you can honor your mother without repeating her patterns. That's the voice that says, now I am responsible for myself. Now I choose who I am. Now I can be free. And that freedom begins when you realize what binds you is not your real mother. It's what your mind made of her. And only you can undo that image, deprogram that pattern, dissolve that psychic entity with love, with awareness, with compassion, not to erase the story, but to finally write your own. The crystallization of pain, how your soul froze in time. Have you ever felt like a part of you stopped in time? As if, despite life moving on, the years passing, and your accomplishments, something inside you is still stuck in an old scene, in a memory that holds you, in a look that froze you, in a no that never became a yes. That feeling isn't fantasy, it's the perfect description of one of the deepest phenomena of the unconscious, the crystallization of pain. When you went through an emotional trauma, and here, trauma doesn't have to mean something extreme, but rather something your soul couldn't process. A part of you froze. It's that simple. To protect you, your psyche took that intense emotion, that unprocessed pain, and stored it. Like freezing food for later, but time passed, and that later never came. You kept living, but that emotional fragment stayed right there, untouched, stored like a capsule of pain, floating inside you, waiting to be acknowledged. And the most surprising thing, even frozen, that part of you is still alive. It feels, it reacts, it influences. That's why, even as an adult, you still feel like a rejected child. That's why you lose control when faced with criticism, abandonment, or authority. It's not you. It's the part of you that's still stuck in an old moment of pain. Carl Jung said that what isn't integrated into consciousness becomes destiny. And that's exactly what happens here. The pain you didn't feel becomes a repeated pattern. You always end up in the same kind of relationship. You sabotage opportunities without knowing why. You feel like you're not moving forward, like you always end up back at square one. And deep down, that's exactly what's happening. A part of you really is still frozen in time. Picture a crystal of ice inside your soul. Inside it is you, at the emotional age of the trauma. Inside are your scared eyes, your desire to flee, your longing to be loved. Inside is your frozen soul, and here's the point. It's not enough to move on. It's not enough to think positively. It's not enough to ignore the past. You'll only break free when you find the courage to go back and thaw that frozen part of yourself. Yes, you have to go back, not to relive the trauma, but to rescue the version of yourself that was paralyzed by the pain. That takes courage, compassion, and above all, time. You don't thaw trauma in a weekend of self-help. It's a process, a melting of the soul, slow but sacred. So how do you do it? First, by recognizing where you got stuck. What is the scene that still controls you? What is the memory that still limits you? Second, by embracing the original emotion. You don't have to fix it. You need to feel it. Give voice to the silenced cry. Offer comfort to the ignored fear. Give love to the part of you that was left alone. And third, by bringing that part into the present. Showing it that now you have resources, that now you've grown, that now you can protect it. Because at its core, this thawing process is the beginning of your inner motherhood. It's when you stop looking for a mother outside and become the mother of the part of you that was frozen by pain. And the magic happens right there. When pain is finally seen, it dissolves. Like ice in the sun, it loses its power to paralyze. It turns into wisdom, and you return to life whole again. Carl Jung reminded us that what we face becomes our strength, and what we avoid continues to rule us. You can choose, stay frozen, or warm your story with awareness and love. The pain you feel is not from now, but it needs you now in order to be freed. It's time to melt the past and let life flow through you again. Individuation and inner motherhood, becoming your own parent. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you're waiting for someone to take care of you, to comfort you, to defend and protect you? As if deep down, part of you is still asking, see me, save me. That longing is valid. It's the call of your inner child. But the truth is, the someone you're waiting for is you. There comes a moment in life when we can no longer remain emotional children. We must become the fathers and mothers of our own soul. This is the heart of the individuation journey, according to Carl Jung. A deep, symbolic, and transformative process in which we stop living under the shadow of parental archetypes and begin to live from our true inner center. To individuate is to stop being a reflection of others, to stop looking outside for what can only be born within, to walk through the myths we've created around mother and father and discover that we carry inside us all the resources we once sought in others. But where to begin? The first step is recognizing that at some point in your story, you stopped receiving the care you needed. And from that point on, you started adapting. You started waiting. You started begging for love, approval, comfort. That wounded child still lives inside you, but they don't have to wait anymore. Today, you can reach out to them. You can say what no one ever said. I see you. I hear you. I'm here to care for you. And that gesture, though invisible, changes everything. Inner motherhood is not an abstract concept. It's a living practice. It's when you stop punishing yourself and start nurturing yourself. It's when you identify pain and offer presence, not judgment. It's when you learn to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of love. You become the father who protects, the mother who comforts, the force that sustains, and this doesn't happen overnight. But it begins with one simple act. Stop expecting your real mother or anyone else to do what only you can do now. This is the greatest liberation anyone can experience. You no longer need to ask for permission to be who you are. You no longer need to please others to feel loved. You no longer need to repeat old patterns just to feel accepted. You can now be whole. Carl Jung said that individuation is a lifelong task, and there's no enlightenment without facing our own shadow. And the biggest shadow we carry is the unheld child. But when you bring that child into awareness, when you give them a voice, when you care for them with maturity and love, you ignite a light that never goes out, the light of your true self. That light becomes your new guide, and it is born from the comfort you learn to give yourself. Yes, you can be your own mother. You can be your own father, and that's not sad, it's powerful, because now you no longer depend on someone else's healing to move forward. You don't need to change your mother. You just need to step into the role that was always yours, the guardian of your own soul. And when that happens, something extraordinary is revealed. You stop repeating the past. You start living with freedom, with sovereignty, with love. You find within yourself a home that no one can take away. The healing. Have you ever wished with all your heart for the pain to just stop? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, when will this stop hurting? As if no matter how hard you try to move on, there's a wound inside you, always ready to bleed again. That wound has a name. It's called your story, but it also has something else. It can be healed. Yes, pain can turn into a scar, and over time, that scar becomes wisdom. But here's what no one tells you about healing. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering, without being hurt anymore. Healing happens when you can look back at everything you lived, without denial, without dramatizing, without running, and say with clarity, this shaped me, but it doesn't define me. This touched me, but it didn't destroy me. I am more than what wounded me. Healing doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from an apology that never came. It doesn't come from a mother who changes. It doesn't come from a miracle that erases the past. It is born from within, from the moment you choose to stop carrying what's no longer yours, from the moment you understand your mother can't give you what she herself doesn't have, and as painful as that may be, it's also liberating. Because it's at that very point that something in you lets go, the expectation, the illusion, the need to fix it all. You stop waiting for the ideal mother and start building the healthiest version of yourself. You stop searching outside and begin nurturing from within. Carl Jung said that the encounter with the unconscious is always a healing experience. But healing requires courage. The courage to descend into the basements of your soul, to revisit the pain, to see your mother with the eyes of reality, not of longing. And when you do that, a miracle happens. You begin to feel peace. A peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. A peace that comes simply from accepting your story and choosing to move forward anyway. You're no longer trying to change anyone. You're just learning to be whole with what is. And that, my friend, is healing. It's when tears give way to silence, when anger gives way to understanding, when guilt gives way to maturity. You don't need more explanations or apologies or justice. You only need your truth and permission to be happy despite what was missing. Because yes, many things were missing, but now you have something you never had before. Awareness. And with it, you can choose differently. You can be the one in your lineage who breaks the cycle of pain. You can be the one who chooses peace. You can become your own remedy. Healing is not magical, it is real, and it begins with one gesture, looking at yourself with compassion. Today, maybe for the first time, you're seeing yourself with new eyes, not as a victim of your story, but as the author of your next chapter. And this next chapter can be lighter, more yours, more alive. You are healing, little by little, and that's all that matters. Symbolic forgiveness. letting go without needing to justify. Have you ever felt that forgiving would betray your pain? As if, by forgiving, you'd be saying that what was done to you was okay. As if forgiveness meant forgetting, minimizing, or even denying what you went through. Then listen closely. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not justifying. Forgiveness is freeing yourself. And more than that, true forgiveness is symbolic. In Jungian psychology, symbolic forgiveness doesn't happen between two egos. It doesn't depend on the other person's presence, or on them admitting their fault, or on a final conversation. It happens between your wounded soul and your higher self. It is an inner right, a sacred act, a break from loyalty to pain. You don't forgive your mother because she deserves it. You forgive because you deserve peace. And this forgiveness doesn't need an audience. It can happen in the silence of your room, in a quiet breath, in the decision to stop feeding resentment, like someone who finally decides to stop drinking poison while waiting for the other to suffer. You've carried this long enough, and maybe you haven't even noticed. But that resentment has shaped you. It gave you identity. It gave you something to talk about. It even gave you a reason not to move forward. But now you're ready to let it go. Symbolic forgiveness is like opening a cage and realizing you were the one locked inside. It's understanding that keeping the pain alive won't bring you what you didn't get. It'll only keep charging you emotional interest on a debt that's no longer yours. To forgive is to end the cycle. It's breaking from the past without denying it ever happened. It's accepting that your mother had limits and that those limits hurt you. But most of all, it's honoring yourself enough to no longer live in the shadow of that pain. You no longer need to wait for her to change, to understand, to apologize. You can today, in a quiet and private gesture, look within and say, I forgive you, not because everything's okay, but because I choose not to carry this anymore. And in that moment, something deep happens. You recover your energy, your vitality, your power, because symbolic forgiveness is the act of reclaiming the parts of yourself that were trapped in the past. It's a rescue, a reunion. Carl Jung said that accepting the past is the beginning of transforming the present. And forgiveness is exactly that, a radical acceptance, a way of telling your story, I see it all, and even so, I choose to move forward. There is nothing more revolutionary than that. Symbolic forgiveness doesn't make your pain any less real. It makes it sacred, and it transforms you from survivor to master of yourself. Today, you have the right to let go, to live without dragging the weight, to love without depending, to exist without blaming. That's the forgiveness that heals, the forgiveness that frees, the forgiveness that brings your soul back to the present. The psychic rebirth, when you break free from the inner prison. Can you feel it? Something in you has already started to shift. Maybe you don't have the words yet. Maybe it feels subtle, but deep down, you're not the same person who started this video. It's as if the inner walls have started to crack, as if the weight you carried has finally found a place to be released. As if a voice, long silenced, is beginning to whisper, you're coming home. This is the beginning of your psychic rebirth. Carl Jung said that we are born many times throughout life, and that true birth is not physical, but symbolic. It's when the soul awakens from the numbness of unconscious repetition. It's when you look at the inner prison and for the first time, see the door and realize it was always open. Yes, you were imprisoned, but not by bars, by images, by emotional pacts. My childhood complex is reinforced by silence, and now, little by little, you've begun to break free, not because the past disappeared, but because you brought it into the light. You had the courage to look at your pain, to recognize the patterns, to name the shadow, to place your symbolic mother on the altar of reality, and finally take your rightful place in the world. That is true rebirth, when you stop waiting to be set free and choose to free yourself. It's when you say goodbye to the child who waited for love and embrace the adult who learned to love themselves. It's when you break the invisible chain of loyalty and honor your lineage by being different. It's when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this now?" This rebirth isn't dramatic. It's a quiet recognition that you can begin again. Now, with every thought you change, with every memory you reframe, with every time you tell yourself, "I am enough," you are being born again. And in this new life, you no longer need the approval you once chased. You no longer need the apologies, the gestures that never came, because now you understand the key was always in your hands, and the prison, it was never made of steel. It was made of fear, of loyalty, of unconscious images. And today, it no longer holds you. You have broken free. You broke free the moment you looked at yourself with compassion, the moment you felt the pain without running, the moment you became the mother and father you always longed for. And that break isn't the end. It's the beginning of a life that's lighter, more conscious, more true. A life where you are no longer at war with your past, but at peace with who you've become. A life where you can look at your mother, real or symbolic, and say, "Thank you for giving me life. The rest, I'll take care of." Because now, you are free. Breaking the prison and writing a new destiny. Take a deep breath. If you've made it this far, something in you has already transformed. Maybe, for the first time, you've realized that you're not broken, just frozen in a story that now can be released. You've understood that the pain was no longer about your real mother, but about the image your psyche created of her. That you carried wounds that no longer belonged to the present, but were still shaping your choices. That invisible loyalty kept you imprisoned, and symbolic forgiveness can set you free without needing justification. You've discovered that you can become your own father and mother, that you can thaw your soul, be reborn psychically, and carry with lightness what once felt like a burden. You've realized that healing is not about forgetting the past, it's about making peace with it. And now, it's time to act. Practice inner listening. Every time pain arises, ask, "Is this pain from now, or from a part of me still stuck back there?" Write a letter to your symbolic mother. You don't need to send it. Just write it all out. What hurt, what was missing, what you've understood. Then burn it. Let the fire transform it. Create a space of inner care. It could be a meditation, a physical place, an image, a symbolic space where your inner child can go when scared. Repeat daily, "I release the image that imprisons me. I'm the caregiver of my own soul." If possible, seek therapeutic support. This is a deep process, and you don't have to go through it alone. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of this video touched your soul the most? Do you recognize any of these images in your story? Have you ever tried to become your own parent? Leave a comment. I read everyone. If this video moved you, like it, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the channel. Here we don't run from pain, we turn it into awareness, and awareness into freedom, because yes, you can be free. You can break the invisible prison, and finally, live with soul. See you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself the way you always wish someone had.